Hello, everyone, and welcome to this first recording, this first episode that we've actually recorded in 2022. So happy New Year to all of you, although that will probably be slightly out of date once this is posted on our website. But great to be recording again so early in 2022. My name is Andrew Knight, and I'm the Global Lead for Data and Technology at RICS. I sit within the regulatory standards and thought leadership part of the organization, and my job is to look at the effect of data and technology right across the built and natural environment, with over 130,000 members worldwide, working right across all the different asset types of residential, commercial, land, property, infrastructure. There's clearly a huge impact already in terms of the way data and technology can positively help the way we manage, build, operate assets. And I'm really happy today to have Cuong from Octant AI to join me. So please do join me on screen, Cuong.
Thanks, Andrew.
Great to have you on board. And I guess my first question is, and I'm intrigued with perhaps the background of the people yourselves who've started it, but could you perhaps, as you describe this session, the kind of AI revolution for projects, what exactly is Octant AI? Could you give us a bit of a thumbnail sketch of the startup?
Sure. Well, Octant AI is a artificial intelligence platform that came about from research that I'd conducted at Oxford University and had drawn some inspiration from my own career in mega projects. And what Octant AI does is it solves project failure by early and accurate prediction of a project's final performance.
Right, and I suppose you perhaps described it in some respects, but ultimately, what kind of problems are we solving here? Because I suppose it's fair to say that the kind of built environment has a reputation for kind of cost and time overruns and an unpredictability and things like optimism bias, all those things. So what are the key kind of issues that Octant AI is aiming to solve?
Well, one of the things that is really fascinating about the project world is that it's just so pervasive in society. You know, by 2025, there's an estimated $9 trillion worth of capital investment around the world in projects, and we spend about a third of our working lives in projects in the OECD. So projects touch millions of people's lives. So you think about all the transport, health, education, water and power systems, which are all built as projects. And even achieving the sustainability development goals is also done through projects. So, you know, improving project performance is a fundamental problem. And if you can really help to improve how projects perform, that's improving society and impacting many millions of people's lives. So, and as you alluded to, unfortunately, projects have this tendency to have quite significant cost and time overruns, as well as benefit shortfalls. So, I mean, put simply, projects don't perform the way that we expect, and that harms society and it harms all manner of stakeholders. So, we're passionate about using AI to help us improve that performance.
And thinking about you personally and your colleagues, what was it in your background that inspired the creation? What's your kind of backstory, Cuong?
Well, I guess I'm passionate about projects, and I saw an opportunity to apply AI. So, as a mechanical engineer and chartered project manager, I've spent about 20 years in the planning and delivery of mega projects, mostly in Australia, but also I've spent time in the UK and in Japan too. And I've personally seen how transformative they are for towns, regions, and people's lives. And unfortunately, I've also seen how often they fail to meet their targets. And because I'd had some experience in applying machine learning to my projects in my career, I saw there was this fantastic opportunity to really enlarge the both the research and practical application of AI for major projects, and not just in Australia, but potentially everywhere. And so when I took my own studies at Oxford University at the business school to learn more about projects and AI, I did so because being an engineer, I wanted to build something that hopefully makes a difference to society.
Now, I mean, it's quite a common sort of origin story where companies kind of come out of that kind of research and academic perspective or background. So how did Octant AI as a company come about? Because clearly you've had this professional backstory and obviously the academic piece as well. So who are the other players within Octant AI, and how did what's that origin story as an actual startup, as an actual delivery of a service?
Well, I met, I mean, I'm one of the co-founders of Octant AI, but I met the founder of Octant AI, David Porter, who was another fellow Australian, um, whilst we were doing our studies at Oxford together. And
Okay.
we both discussed this idea around building a new type of company back in 2016, and it really took about 2 years for us to incorporate the company. And I was involved in all manner of things at the beginning, setting up the company shareholdings and the equity splits and the commercialization plan. But we've been trading as a company since 2018 and
All right.
have been operating out of Brisbane since then. So really, our clients include banks. So we've done work with the World Bank, for instance, Australian governments, and very large international and Australian engineering and construction companies. So I guess as a company, we're very focused on not just creating value for our shareholders, but in our constitution, we've made it a point that our company is really about serving the wider community. And so
Mm,
our constitution actually takes the point that we're serving stakeholders, which is a far bigger responsibility than just serving shareholders directly. So, our mission is really about delivering benefits to the communities we serve and growing the value of the firm for our shareholders too.
indeed. And in terms of the risk of getting slightly into the kind of the nuts and the bolts, what's your vision for where AI is actually going to deliver these benefits? Because I know, one of the classic challenges around infrastructure, particularly, is getting data from other people's projects. So I'm guessing that a lot of the time, the sponsors, that the contractors only have their own data sets. How are you actually using AI and machine learning to overcome the challenges of sometimes this lack of data, or indeed the data might be unstructured? What's sort of happening under the bonnet, as it were, to make it all happen?
Well, you're exactly right. I mean, data is like the fuel for any AI system, and the way that we're dealing with sort of what we call low data environments, and clients who might not have a lot of training data, is we've developed low data methods that allow us to build high performance AI models when clients don't have a lot of training data to provide. And then the way that we do that is by combining a number of different methods together. So rather than just using just straight machine learning, which is the traditional technique, we use hybrid methods that combine both machine learning and statistical models. So
Okay.
that allows us to work with very small data sets, which can nonetheless still provide very good predictive accuracy.
And what kind of, once again, at the risk of getting into the nuts and bolts, what kind of predictions, thinking about the clients you've worked in, what kind of predictions are you making that are then actionable, to use that kind of business jargon phrase, that allow sponsors, contractors to make better decisions as the project's running? And I guess you're making predictions that work right across the phase of the project as well.
Yeah, we made it a really big point that our AI is very general. So we deliver predictive models that work across a number of different project KPIs. So we focus on predicting cost, time, cash flow, margin, and revenue. So
Okay.
those are, if you like, our hard KPI predictions that work both at the project level and at the portfolio level. So that allows for both individual project attention as well as attention at the portfolio level, which so far is quite a differentiating capability for Octant AI. But in addition to that, we also use natural language processing and other kinds of methods to provide some of that actionable insight, so that when we make the predictions, there's evidence around both what that prediction is trying to say about the project and where it's going to end up, as well as things that the project team can do to improve project performance. So it's both the prediction of those hard metrics, if you like, as well as understanding that helps people to actually take action on it in a timely way.
Exactly, yeah, because you say if you can't
Mm,
act on it, then it's really a sort of fairly pointless exercise if you can't make some measures on that. Now,
mm.
I believe you're still working at Sade Business School and doing some research there. What's that covering, and what's that going to add to both your personal learning, but obviously presumably feed back into Octant AI as well?
Yeah, so at the Safe Business School at Oxford, I continue a research program which is really around exploring how we can use AI in major projects. And that's a vast area, as it turns out, and really quite underexplored, which makes it such a really wonderful research opportunity. I tend to focus on the complexity in behavioural sciences, how people make decisions under uncertainty, and particularly in sort of complex project environments, and what role artificial intelligence can play in that setting. So it's a very multidisciplinary research program, and really SAID's such a wonderful place to do it, because it's a relatively new area of research for major projects. And one of the, as I kind of reflect on it, being an executive director at Octant AI, which means, you've got day-to-day business
Mm.
responsibilities. One of the really wonderful pleasures or luxuries, really, in being able to do the research is that I'm relatively free of those commercial constraints, and so I've got this opportunity and remit to, really pursue far-reaching ideas. For instance, one of my recurring research strands is about, how can we practice AI so that it promotes human dignity and community and environmental stewardship, and what does that look like when we're planning and delivering our projects? Because, as we sort of mentioned at the beginning, projects are so pervasive in society.
Mm.
They impact so many lives, and they transform the environment in so many complex ways. It really behooves us to think about, well, how can we engender an approach to AI that makes sure that, we're promoting human flourishing, and not, subjecting and suppressing people's ability to voice their concerns about, how particular projects might be impacting their lives, and so on.
I mean, one thing I don't know whether it's come up particularly in that research or in your thought process, and this is a slight sort of curveball just from discussions with one of our other partners, Holistic AI, is obviously the kind of ethical and governance issues around AI in terms of explainability and how algorithms are developed, and that sort of nature of making sure that we don't end up with decisions being made where there isn't that governance framework. What are your thought processes about, clearly in a project setting, very significant sums of money, and as you say, societal benefits, and what's that balance between AI helping and supporting, but at the same time having that kind of audit trail and understanding what AI is helping you to decide?
Oh, look, that's a wonderful question, and such a rich and fascinating area of research and practice too. So from a project perspective, you're dealing with so many diverse types of stakeholder. As I mentioned before, projects involve so many different types of people, so many different types of parties, and the one of the challenges with building robust AI systems that actually perform well and which are able to give insights in a real-time way is that you just need an awful lot of AI.
Mm.
Much of it isn't always going to contribute to the accuracy of the prediction, but you nonetheless have to start off with a lot just so that you can ultimately build a really high performing model. And so what that means is you're collecting lots and lots of data about lots and lots of different types of things. And so one of the governance concerns then is, how do you build a system that makes sure that you're not just representing the majority in a particular society? So, for instance, if you're building projects or designing projects that are to cater for human access to public services, well, how do you make sure that you're designing services so that all types of people can use it, not just those who are able-bodied, for instance? And how do you, if you're using an AI to design those types of systems or help you design them, well, how do you make sure the training data for the AI incorporates the preferences of those who are differently able and who aren't able to access particular things in the same way as a conventional design standard might allow for? So it's in the design of AI systems. Governance is very important for doing things like building trust in what the AI is predicting, understanding why it's making the predictions in the way it is, and assuring that, again, all types of people's opinions and perspectives are being incorporated in the model building. Because if we're privileging one sector of society over another, what we're likely to be building are biased AI systems. And there are some classic examples from the way that AIs are trained in the judicial system. It's making sure that we're getting access to lots and lots of different types of cases and not just a narrow set of cases. And finally, of course, it's protection of privacy.
Yeah.
Is it going to be a benefit to society to collect personally identifiable data if it delivers more tailored predictions? Well, probably not. You really have to weigh the risks and rewards of taking an approach. And most societies have expressed really strong opposition to taking personalized data and building prediction models off them. Facial recognition is just one example.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Cuong. I guess my next question is almost to sort of ask you where we are at the moment with kind of the application of AI and projects, and what you think we've already achieved, and perhaps more excitingly, what do you think the future holds for the application of AI to projects?
Yeah, look, the promise and perils of AI are massive, and we've seen enormous transformation through this what's been called general purpose technology, on par with inventions like the steam engine and electricity even. Here in Australia, our federal scientific agency, the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organisation, CSIRO, I mean, it estimates that AI's contribution to the global economy is going to be something in the order of $22 trillion by 2030. And in Australia alone, it's something like $315 billion in the next 5 or 6 years. So there's tremendous social value up for grabs there. But the thing that really excites me about AI is, that in spite of its achievements and contributions today, we are still a long way off from achieving what's called artificial general intelligence. And so a lot of the progress that we're seeing now is, what has typically been called, narrow AI. High levels of competency in really very narrow domains. So, DeepMind has just recently shown that we can predict the 3D structure of the way a protein folds just simply from its chemical sequence. But that same AI couldn't predict whether a block, a block of a tower of blocks will fall one way or the other. But that ability to predict where that block is, that tower is going to fall, is something that babies do intuitively by the age of 8 months. So, really, we're very, very capable at delivering very high performance narrow AI systems, but we're a long way away from this notion of artificial general intelligence, which is one of the long-term dreams of many AI scientists. And that's really the province of true thinking and reasoning machines. And when you look at the research on this topic, some believe that it will happen in the next 50 years, and others believe it's going to take centuries to happen. So I think, I'm excited just for what narrow AI can do, and particularly in the world of projects, right, where we're just barely on the cusp of what, of exploring the potential for AI. And so there's tremendous research opportunities around AI for projects, and of course, practical applications too. And I guess in terms of what AI has achieved to date, it's in projects, it's been very technically focused. It's
Yeah.
often very much around engineering focused applications, predicting cracks, for example, in bridges, and in the application that we're developing at AI, it's around predicting project performance. And even with those narrow applications, it's tremendously exciting because, again, AI and projects are a very multidisciplinary area of study. And so what makes this really fascinating and really exciting for me is that you can bring to bear so many different points of view. We can bring in ideas from the social sciences, from medicine, from finance, and apply them in really quite novel ways to what is typically a very traditional industry. We've been building stuff the same way, probably for about the last 40 years.
Yeah.
And the data shows that construction productivity really hasn't increased. If anything, it's gone backwards in the last 40 years. And that's really quite astounding when you compare construction to other industries like agriculture, for instance. So I think, so what really excites me about AI in general and AI in projects in particular is that it's such a new area and it'll be relevant for projects for decades to come, and that the research opportunities and the practical applications really are nearly limitless.
I suppose that it's interesting you talk about that, the concept of general intelligence, and I suppose that the cynic in me wonders whether that's going to be like nuclear fusion, always sort of 20 years away, and it's always 20 years away every time you move forward. But do you see in the short term an ability, particularly thinking about projects that are so multidisciplinary and around so many different asset types, that one could see lots of building blocks of these very powerful, narrow AI type solutions coming together to almost give that sense of general intelligence, because you've been able to combine those very powerful, narrow AI type products that look at specific parts of projects, because that potentially has that ability to almost recreate that generalist skill, but doing it with a combination of narrow focus, I suppose.
Yeah, I definitely see the potential for the combination of as many really narrow systems as you like, really, and combining lots of narrow systems together, I see as, eminently doable. And I have no doubt that that will occur in the next, 10, 15, 20 years or so. However, what's really interesting then is to ask ourselves, well, does, lots of narrow AIs working together comprise general artificial intelligence? And that's actually a really quite profound question. And at present, there don't appear to be many supporters that would see lots of narrow domains coming together to equal, if you like, the artificial general intelligence. In that sort of classic sense where you've got a machine that's able to generalize off a very small amount of learning. We don't really see that. However, I think what you could probably say is that, if you're able to get lots and lots of those narrow AI systems together, and they're able to, if you like, coordinate their outputs in a way to a human that is able to interpret all of those outputs, it could give the semblance of a kind of very complex and sophisticated bunch of AI capabilities. But I would still say that falls short of that, more profoundly complex goal of artificial general intelligence, which is really around transferability and reproducibility and being able to autonomously think, which is, I guess, the classic definition of that kind of AGI point.
So in terms of, takeaways for our audience, what's the one thing that you'd wish, our audience knew about AI for projects? What's the most important thing at the moment that you think the world should be aware of in terms of the potential in this area?
Well, I think, AI is already improving how projects are done and benefiting society right now. It isn't technology out on the horizon, in our work at the least. And those of our peers in the industry, we're seeing those changes happening like right now. So this isn't a 20-year sort of pipe dream in the future. We're seeing those impacts now, and it's thrilling, very challenging, and tremendously exciting. And as combining both the research and the commercial applications in this area is, it has its challenges, but it's also incredibly rewarding.
Indeed. And I suppose leading on from that, I mean, we're very obviously very mindful of making sure we get the right next generation people coming into our profession. And from that perspective, for young people, what would your message be about, as you say yourself, the excitement about AI and projects? If we were talking to an audience of grads thinking, well, where am I going to go? Where am I going to take my skills? Where am I going to take my transferable skills, as we talked earlier about AI? What would be your message for about young people thinking about the built environment and AI and projects?
Yeah, look, I guess that I'll probably start off with just a general comment, but then two specific ones around AI and projects in particular. So, I mean, just in general, I would probably encourage young people from any profession, but particularly in projects, to no matter what age you are and whatever you're doing, just never lose your fascination for the world, and your interest and concern for people and nature. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep developing your passions for your whole life. So that's sort of a general sort of
Understand, yeah.
thought. um, and I guess for those who are interested in AI, I would probably suggest and recommend get some experience in a domain first. So what that means is understand, get knowledge around a particular area, whether it's in projects in infrastructure or in agriculture or in health, that will let you get some ideas around where the big problems are
Yeah.
that are worth exploring and worth solving using AI. So for example, you could use unsupervised learning and agent-based modeling to reveal new and useful insights about how a natural or artificial system behaves.
Mm.
Or you could use supervised or semi-supervised learning to build, really powerful, scalable predictive models that create, enormous amounts of value. And for those who are interested in projects, I would really encourage you to think beyond your discipline boundaries. So, if you're from a traditional project discipline like, engineering or quantity surveying or construction management, I would really encourage young professionals and young people to try and learn and apply new paradigms from like the social sciences, or computer science, medicine or finance. And if you're not from a traditional project discipline, and I've come across lots of people who aren't, think about ways that projects could be disrupted by using outside ideas from your own discipline. So if you're from the humanities or if you're from, biotechnology, think about ways you could leverage what you bring from outside of projects into your project environment. Because we've found it at Octant AI. I mean, that's the only way we've been able to solve the problems that we've come across. Because no one in our industry has published research that has shown us how to solve them. So we've had to take on ideas from lots of other disciplines, like from medicine and finance and so on. So those would be my three ideas. My three words of advice. And I would really encourage. Sort of the next generation of project professionals just to never give up. Keep having fun and look for mentors and supporters who can guide you and nurture you along the way.
Indeed. Well, that's a great message about, I think, about that kind of multidisciplinary, looking for answers from outside the sector. That's a great message to take away with. Well, it's been a fascinating conversation, Cuong, and I look forward to our next episode. So until then, take care. Thanks for your time, and thanks again for a really insightful session.
Thanks, Andrew.